أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. The previous verse that we discussed last week, 229, had one advice about talaq al-khulu', and that was فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا يُقِيمَ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا فِيمَا افْتَدَتْ بِهِ. If you fear that they cannot keep the bounds of Allah, then there is no sin on them in what she gives away to secure her release. Now this is of course what we know as talaq al-khulu', that woman gives back the mahr or whatever to retain her release and her divorce. Now the question here is that if a man wants to divorce her wife but would like to get something back from her and would put her under pressure, would annoy her in a way that she would initiate the talaq, saying that, okay, I give away my mahr or whatever and you divorce me. Is this correct, and would this happen in a correct way if talaq happens in this way? We know that in many cases this happens. Men, they want to divorce their wives, they don't want to live together. However, the man does not initiate talaq, and what she does, she somehow put more pressure on the wife, and eventually the wife says, okay, I give away my mahr and you give my talaq. Legally, from fiqh point of view, is this talaq sahih, correct or incorrect? If someone does this, does the talaq take place or it doesn't take place? Now this is a point of disagreement about different madhahib. Now I mentioned about Sunni madhahib first and then come to our own madhab. What happens, what is the situation here if a man does that? Now in Hanafi school, they say that although it's a sin on the husband, on the part of husband, and he has committed a sin doing this, but khulu has taken place correctly, he can own the money or whatever he receives from the wife, and the wife should give it away if khul happens in this way. This is the Hanafi school. In Shafi'i and Maliki school, they say that no, the khulu is batil. If such a thing happens, the khulu is batil, the talaq doesn't take place at all, and the man should return whatever he has taken from the wife. Now in Shi'i school, there is a sort of differentiation between two things. They say the khulu is not sahih. So the husband doesn't own anything. If the wife gives away the mahr, the husband would not possess it. However, the talaq takes place not as a khulu but as a ordinary talaq, as a raj'i talaq. So here again we have this conflict between the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. As in the case of talaq, in most situations this conflict between the letter of the law and the spirit of the law comes in, and we will discuss it inshallah in the next verse in more details, because Allah says that وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا آيَاتِ اللَّهِ خُزُوًا, do not take these ayat of Allah, these verses, as a matter of mockery. And mockery, most of the exegetes say that it means that you take the letter of the law and do proceed according to that without keeping the spirit of the law. Now here, as we see, if there is a fear that they cannot keep the bounds of Allah in marriage, and usually they say bounds of Allah is having a good relationship, keeping the honorable conduct. If the bitterness, animosity that comes to that extent that they cannot keep that, then khulu is something which would be an option. However, if a man does that in a sense that in a sense of playing with the law, that pressurizes the woman so that she initiates the talaq, according to Shi'i fiqh, the talaq takes place, but not as a khul, but as an ordinary talaq. It's a raj'i talaq, and the man would not own anything given to him by the wife. Now, let's go to the next verse, verse number 230. فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا فَلَا تَحِلُّ لَهُ مِن بَعْدُ حَتَّى تَنْكِحَ زَوْجًا غَيْرَهُ فإن طلقها فلا جناح عليهما أن يتراجعا إن ظن أن يقيما حدود الله. You see how many times it's repeated that they can keep the bounds of Allah. They can keep the bounds of Allah. وَتِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ. These are the bounds of Allah. يُبَيِّنُهَا لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ. And if he divorces her, she will not be lawful for him until she marries a husband other than him. And if he divorces her, there is no sin upon them to return to each other if they think that they can maintain Allah's bounds. These are Allah's bounds, which she clarifies for the people who have knowledge. Now, حَتَّى تَنْكِحَ زَوْجًا غَيْرَهُ. So, now after 3 talaq, which has taken place according to the rules of the 3 talaq, the husband and wife cannot remarry each other. So there's a talaq, then whether during the time of iddah, the husband returns, or after that they remarry again. If this happens for 3 times, then they cannot remarry with each other until she marries another husband. And this marriage should be a correct marriage, a permanent marriage, a consummated marriage, not just a sort of formal thing that they agree, she and the previous husband agree that, okay, formally I marry this man without consummating the marriage, without actually living together, and then we get talaq and come back to each other. This is not sahih. It is actually there to deter the talaq to happen continuously, one after another. And it means that it doesn't close the door if they want to go back to each other. However, it puts the husband in a very, very difficult situation, that she has to marry another husband. If that husband divorces her, then if they want to remarry again, it is permissible for them to do that. And as I said, it should be a correct marriage, consummated, permanent, and whether there should be an intention there that I marry so that we become wife and husband for a while, and then he divorces me and we come back together. If they have such an intention, is it correct or not? We'll discuss it later on. But the rule is that she has to marry another husband, and in case they could not live with each other and the husband and wife decide to divorce each other, then the previous husband has the right to remarry this woman. However, it's again based on hududullah. فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا. If the second husband divorces her, فَلَا جُنَاهَ عَلَيْهِمَا أَن يَتَرَاجَعَا. There is no sin that they return to each other. إِن ظَنَّ أَن يُقِيمَ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ. If they think that they can keep the bounds of Allah. Now, these bounds of Allah here, almost all Mufassirin have said is that حُسْنُ الصُّحْبَةِ وَالْمُعَاشَرَةِ, that they can live peacefully with each other, honorable conduct in family. This is hududullah in family. If they think that they cannot do that, and bitterness comes again. They would hate each other. The husband coerces the wife would not do tamkin, would not listen to the husband. Then it's not, well, in dhanna an yuqima hududallah is a condition here. It means that if they think that they cannot do this, it's not permissible for them to go back. Or maybe it's not advisable for them to go back, because usually dhan here is different from ilm. If they really deem that they can do it, because ilm never happens in these cases, that yes, I really know that we can keep the bounds of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that this marriage is not possible. So if they feel, dhan here means feeling, if they feel that they can do that, then there is no sin on them to go back. What if they don't feel that they can do that? Of course, it's not permissible for them to do. And if they do, they just have wronged themselves. They just have brought unhappiness to their lives again. Now here, something has, sometimes take place to comply with the letter of the law rather than the spirit of the law. Now, the spirit of the law is that wife and husband, after 3 divorces, they should not remarry again. Unless, of course, there is another marriage, there is a divorce of their own will, and then the ex-husband and wife decide to go back to each other again. Now, sometimes after 3 divorces, wife and husband regret what they have done. And they actually create a sort of formal but fake marriage, in the sense that, okay, we agree with a man that he would marry with you, and of course the marriage should be consummated. He would marry with you, and after a while he would divorce you, and then we come back to each other again. This marriage is called muhallal, and the man is called muhallal. That makes the marriage halal again for the two to go back to each other. Now, if there is such an intention and such a sort of fake situation created by man and husband to follow the letter of the law rather than the spirit. The spirit of the law is that they shouldn't go back to each other unless in case something like that happen. Is this halal or it's not halal? Now, the point about this muhallal is that if they have actually stipulate at the beginning of marriage that you marry provided you divorce her, it's not correct. There's no such a stipulation is acceptable, because this goes against the spirit of this law. However, there's again disagreement among the different schools here. For example, the Malikis and the Hanafis, they say that if there is such a stipulation from the beginning, it doesn't take place at all. The marriage is batil, the tahleel is would not take place, and they cannot go back to each other because of the hadith of the Prophet who said, La'anallahu al-muhallala wal-muhallala lah. May Allah curse the muhallal and the one for whom this tahleel takes place. So, with such a condition, this marriage is batil. The, of course, return is not acceptable. However, other fuqaha, and including the Shia fuqaha, they say that the stipulation is batil. The marriage is not batil. The stipulation is batil. So if, for example, they agree with the man, okay, you come and marry this woman for a while, for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and then divorce, on the condition that you divorce her afterwards, and because we want to remarry, this stipulation is batil. If the man marries that woman and he doesn't want to divorce her anymore, it's his right. So the stipulation is batil. Anyhow, again, you see, most of the time, with these sort of situations, we come with a conflict between the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. And very clearly, Allah mentions in the Quran that you have to keep the spirit of the law. Otherwise, it's just mockery. Keeping the letter of the law, Allama Tabatabai very clearly mentions that keeping the letter of the law without respecting, regarding the spirit of the law, is just a mockery of Allah's hudud. Now, وَإِذَا طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ, another ruling about the talaq, the divorce. وَإِذَا طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ. Now, why this matter is discussed here in such a detailed manner and so elaborately is very clear, because this is one of the most important issues in human life. Marriage and divorce, one of the most important issues in human life, and therefore we would expect that the Quran, Allah would give us guidance with regards to this issue. وَإِذَا طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ فَبَلَغْنَ أَجَلَهُنَّ فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ أَوْ صَرِّحُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ. When you divorce women and they complete their term, that the iddah, waiting period, then either return them honorably. Now, so فَبَلَغْنَ أَجَلَهُنَّ, all exegetes say that when they are to finish, because if they finish, the husband cannot go back. It means they are to finish just a couple of days before they finish the iddah. The husband has the right to retain them or to release them. Then either retain them honorably or release them honorably. فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ أَوْ صَرِّحُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ وَلَا تُمْسِكُوهُنَّ ضِرَارًا لِتَعْتَدُوا. And do not retain them maliciously in order that you may transgress. وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ فَقَدْ ظَلَمَ نَفْسَهُ. And whoever does that certainly wrongs himself. The husband who does this, that's very interesting, we'll discuss that later on. Not wronging the wife, it's wronging himself as well. وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ فَقَدْ ظَلَمَ نَفْسَهُ وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا آيَاتِ اللَّهِ هُزُوًا. And do not take the signs of Allah in derision. وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ وَمَا أَنزَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ وَالْحِكْمَةِ يَعِظُكُمْ بِهِ. And remember Allah's blessings upon you and what He has sent down to you of the book and wisdom to advise you. And وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. And be wary of Allah and know that Allah has knowledge of all things. Again, you see the emphasis which is put on ma'ruf, honorable conduct. The emphasis put on the spirit of the law. The emphasis put on taqwa from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why taqwa is very important in these matters? Because usually the intention of people is not something that law can judge. And the way they behave, again, the law can only judge according to the letter of the rulings. However, taqwa becomes very important in these matters because it goes beyond the letter of the law, it goes into the spirit of the law, and this is something that Allah expects from the believers. Now, فَبَلَغْنَا أَجَلَهُنَّ فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ. Again, ma'ruf is here interpreted as husnul mu'ashara, good relationship, to good conduct. So either you keep them and have good conduct and good relationship in future, not like the past that you divorced because of the bitterness and things like that. If you want to continue with bitterness, you want to retain the marriage with bitterness, it's better to end it because this is not ma'ruf. This is not something that Allah wants. فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ أَوْ سَرِّحُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ. Or release them again, honorably. And honorably here means that give her all her rights. Do not annoy her after marriage. Do not stop her to marry whoever she wants. This is, of course, ma'ruf again. سرهوهن بمعروف أمسكوهن بمعروف وسرهوهن بمعروف ولا تمسكوهن ضرارا لتعتدوا. And unfortunately, we see that in most cases, in many cases of talaq, some husbands do this. That before the iddah finishes, they return and retain the wife just to annoy and agonize her. This is wronging them and wronging themselves. وَلَا تُمْسِكُهُنَّ ضِرَارًا لِتَعْتَدُوا. It is i'tida, it's transgression. It's transgression of the law. But because your intention is not known, the law can not judge you, the letter of the law cannot judge you, but Allah can judge you. Allah can see. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. Allah can see everything. He can judge you. So وَلَا تُمْسِكُهُنَّ ضِرَارًا لِتَعْتَدُوا. Do not retain them with the intention of agonizing and annoying them, because this is i'tida and transgression. If you want to go back with the intention of course, observing all the rights of marriage, living with good conduct with each other. Now, there's one question here, and that is, لا تمسكوهن ضررا عليهن should be. Do not keep them to harm them. However, it's just لا تمسكوهن ضرارا. ضرار is from مضارة, it's two sides. It means if you do that, you harm them and you harm them yourself. And this is very clear, because that bitterness is not only for the wife, it's for the husband as well. It's mudara. They do not realize that bitterness would create something which harms the both sides. So it's mudara. وَلَا تُمْسِكُوهُنَّ ذِرَارًا لِتَعْتَدُوا. First of all, the first thing which happens, you want to agonize your wife. Allah will become angry with you. This is the greatest harm, isn't it? So it's mudara. It's two sides. Mudara. And secondly, this would lead to a situation where the wife should become bitter. Always you have quarrel with each other. And it is going to be, again, a two-sided harm which would not benefit anyone. وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ فَقَدْ ظَلَمَ نَفْسَهُ. Whoever does this, of course, harms the wife, but wrongs himself. Usually, ظَلَمَ نَفْسَهُ in the Quran used in the matter of sin, because any sin is a dhulm, wronging one's own self. We cannot wrong Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By sinning, we don't wrong Allah. Allah cannot be wronged, but we wrong ourselves. Means if someone has this intention, it's certainly sin. وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ فَقَدْ ظَلَمَ نَفْسَهُ. And apart from being a sin in the conventional way, it is wronging oneself in the ni'mah that Allah has given us in terms of creating. He has created spouses for us to live a happy life, and we actually turn it into bitterness, and this is, of course, wronging one's own self. وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا آيَاتِ اللَّهِ هُزُوًا. Now, this is very important. If you take ayatullah just in its letter, it is mockery. And this has happened to nations before us, isn't it? That Allah condemns some of the Jews in the past who took ayatullah huzwa, who took the letter of the law and left the spirit of the law. And this is just a mockery of the ayatullah. And Allah Tabatabai Rahmatullah Alayhi says that these laws are legislated to bring happiness into life, to bring saada and prosperity. So, if someone uses the letter of these laws to bring bitterness, to bring harm to themselves and others, they are actually mocking and deriding these verses. They have actually put these ayat behind their back and have played with them. The exact word that Allama Tabatabai says here, فَمَنْ اقْتَصَرَ فِي دِينِهِ عَلَى ظَوَاهِرِ الْأَحْكَامِ وَنَبَذَ غَيْرَهَا وراء ظهره فقد اتخذ ونبذها وراء ظهره فقد اتخذ آيات الله هزوا. Now, there's another very important thing which is mentioned here. By doing this, by taking these rulings and verses as a matter of derision and mockery, you have destroyed the ni'mah of Allah that He has given you. وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ وَمَا أَنزَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. Remember the ni'mah of Allah on you and what He has sent down in terms of book and wisdom to advise you. يَعِظُكُمْ بِهِ. It's a very beautiful ending actually to this verse, very beautiful. That do not spoil the ni'mah of Allah that He has given you. These laws are His ni'mah. The spouses that He has created for you are ni'mah. Do not destroy them by taking these verses as a mockery. Now, this ni'matullah, وَذْكُرُوا ni'matallahi alaykum, may have two meanings. One is ni'matuddin. Remember how Allah has guided you with His religion. Or remember the reality of these laws, which is the greatest ni'mah, which has been legislated for you to live happily, to live with prosperity. And if you disregard them, although you may not notice, your life gradually would degenerate into something which would never create happiness for you. Sometimes we, for example, disregard some of the laws of Allah, and after 200 years we see the result of it in the society. They gradually lead to things which are not desirable. So this is ni'matuddin. And therefore, وَمَا أَنزَلَ عَلَيْكُم مِّنَ الْكِتَابِ وَالْحِكْمَةِ is an explanation of ni'matullah. And of course, ni'matullah, the highest ni'mah, which completes all other ni'mah for us. And everything Allah has given us is a ni'mah, our life, our abilities, anything which He has given us in terms of property, family, is ni'mah. But what completes all these is faith and believing in Him and following His religion. And that's why Allah says that اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي. My ni'mah is now complete on you with this guidance. So ما أنزل عليكم من الكتاب والحكمة is description of this ni'mah. And the kitab and hikmah, the difference is kitab is the letter of the law, hikmah is the wisdom behind it. As some of the mufassirin has said, Allah has given you both kitab, the law, and hikmah, the wisdom, which supports those laws. Although you may not know many of these wisdoms, but there's always a wisdom behind the laws that Allah legislates. Now, the other meaning of this ni'mah may be just the ni'mah that Allah has given you in terms of life, in terms of family. By deriding these laws, you destroy that ni'mah. Remember this ni'mah, remember everything that Allah has given you. Always look at the blessings rather than look at what is missing. Usually what happens in marriage, especially in marital life, we look at what is missing in our mutual relationship, and then we become bitter with each other. We don't look at the blessings that we have with each other. And this is what Allah says, وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ. Remember that ni'mah, وَلَا تُفْسِدُوا كَمَالَ حَيَاتِكُمْ وَنِعْمَةَ وُجُودِكُمْ. Do not just corrupt this ni'mah with disregarding these laws. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ. Fear God. It means fear. Fear God means fear disobeying Him. Because disobeying Him would lead life into bitterness and hardship. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. And you should know that Allah knows everything and sees everything. And the following verse is a follow-up of this. Inshallah, we leave this for next week. وَصَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ وَآلِهِ الطَّاهِرِينَ.
Thank you very much indeed, Shaykh. Brothers and sisters, we have about 15-20 minutes to clarify any points or anything that you want to bring forward, or you may have heard in the past which you want to clarify. Anybody? Any sisters? Sheikh, I was a bit surprised to hear that even Shias allow the halala with stipulation, although the other two...
No, the stipulation is batil.
No, the stipulation batil, they cannot be enforced, but it can be done with stipulation as well.
Well, if it's batil, it means the stipulation has no effect anyhow. And
but for example, to have a stipulation that you can do halala so that even so the second husband can leave, even he agrees to divorce the wife, and then the wife remarries the first husband. That bit, although in the letter of the law it's allowed, but spirit of law.
When we say it's batil, it means that they may agree on that, but they are not bound to follow it. It means that it's as void, it's as there is no.
No. But what I'm saying is that okay, the stipulation cannot be enforced. But supposing the second husband agrees and he leaves, divorces the second wife because he feels that he had the first husband maybe his friend, for example, and he wanted to keep the promise to his friend, and so he divorces the wife, and then the first husband, being the friend, can remarry. So that bit...
It's not my fault anyway.
Okay. So any brothers, sisters? Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. Shaykh, you mentioned Rasulullah actually did la'na on this kind of behavior. Can you give us some background of the history? When did that happen and why?
I don't know. I haven't investigated that. Maybe, inshallah, for next time I will see what's the background of that. Inshallah.
Any sisters?
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. Shaykh, you mentioned the word tamkeen. Can you just expand a little bit on that?
Tamkeen means that the wife should observe the rights of husband in the relationship. Observe the rights of the husband in the relationship. That's tamkeen. Okay?
Thank you. Any brothers, sisters? Anybody? No? Seems okay.
All are happy.
Seems like it. Okay. Anybody? Yeah. Okay, please. Yeah.
Okay, so this is just quite general. So we've been talking the last few weeks about how many rights men have over women, and I just feel like it's quite overwhelming. Like in terms of divorce, the woman doesn't even get the right. And there's an ayat where there's a lot of criteria, but a man can eventually beat the wife. Back to the thing about how one man witness for two women witness. Even in the last ayat we're talking about, it says about how men are 1 degree higher than women, and all of this stuff is like, I don't know, it doesn't sit right with me, you know, like it feels like Allah says he's equal. He says that he sees men and women as equal. So why has he given so much extra right? Like a woman would never be allowed to beat her husband. With whatever criteria, right? Yeah, it's harsh criteria of when a man can actually finally beat the wife, but it's still allowed. So I just feel like, why is there so much extra rights given to a man compared to the wife? Man compared to a woman, or whatever.
Now, rights and responsibilities compensate each other. You have probably heard about Sheikh Ja'far Kashif al-Ghita. He was a very, very great faqih and a man of spirituality, maybe the greatest scholar of his time. And then it was heard that when he goes back to his house, he goes back home after the Isha prayer, and there's a quarrel between him and his wife beats him. Now, this man was a very respectable man, and the women started to talk about it, that Sheikh Jafar Kashif Uqlata's wife beats him. And it's not sort of conceivable that it happens. So gradually they spoke to their husbands. Yes, his wife beats him. He comes to pray, lead the prayer and goes home, and sometimes his wife beats him. And these men went to him and said, Sheikh, do you want us to talk to your wives, that this is not right, you are being oppressed really at home, and you are beaten by your wife? He said, many of these spiritual achievements that I have had is because I have put up with this wife, and I have accepted the beatings and everything. I haven't wronged her at all. I haven't beaten her. She beats me. I don't beat her. I don't retaliate. And then Allah is giving me blessings for that. And I want it to be like that. There are certain rights and responsibilities that compensate each other. As the verse says, وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ. They have rights in accordance to their responsibilities. And men have rights in accordance to their responsibilities. There's another very famous scholar. His name was Tabatabai, like, of course, Allama Tabatabai, not him. And he was leading the prayer, the main prayer. And a couple of nights he didn't come to lead the prayer. And people asked him, what has happened? He said, I have lost my adala, my being just. And they said, why? They said, because usually my wife swears at me when I go home. You are such, you are such, you are such. And I don't respond. I just keep quiet. And last night, she made me very angry. And I told her, whatever you say, go back to yourself. And I shouldn't have done that. I have lost my adala. And I would not come to pray unless she forgives me. Now, you see, we have honorable conduct. We have letter of the law. Letter of the law is based on responsibilities, differences in nature. I mean, women give birth. They cannot work in most cases in that situation. They have to look after the children. The children should feel the care of the mother rather than all the time being away from the mother. In that case, they cannot, of course, look after their provisions. The husband should do that. These differences has created different responsibilities in the family, and this has created different laws. As I explained before, وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ الدَّرَجَةِ doesn't mean that men are better than them. It means that the rights that I have given to men is above the right that I have given to women for some wisdom. And inshallah, in the next verse, we will discuss how Allah is advising us to deal with these differences.
Shukran. Any other? Yeah? Can take mine.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Just building on that, so for example, in the first example that you used where he stayed with his wife despite the fact that, she was like that, sometimes that always raises the question with me where it's like, sometimes if you're going through something difficult or there's a hardship put on you, people say it's okay, like you're supposed to just go through it and there'll be blessings from that. But then at the same time, we're also encouraged that you're supposed to do what you can to make your life better, like you're not supposed to just passively sit back and let things happen. So how do you know when you're supposed to do something about something and resolve the situation yourself versus when this is just a trial for you. You're supposed to allow it to happen. It's supposed to be bad, and then you just and say that and tell yourself there'll be a blessing afterwards.
You know, making your life better may have different meaning for different people, okay? Some may think of, okay, I want a very pleasant life, an obedient wife, a wife which would, for example, provide every happiness for me. And some, like Sheikh Ja'far Kashif al-Ghita, may think that, no, I want other blessings. And I think get these blessings through this type of behavior. So Allah hasn't made it compulsory. It has left it to our own judgment to decide what type of happiness we want, how we want to deal with something. For example, there may be children in the family that may be harmed by divorce. And one may think that the happiness of my children is above my own happiness and goes through all those to keep the happiness of the children to attain another happiness for themselves. In fact, Allama Tabatabai has a book, Qu'ran in Islam, explaining the rulings of Islam for the Western people in that book. And in the introduction, he says that the main purpose of man in life, as we see it everywhere, is to achieve happiness. That's clear. All of us. Even those who commit suicide, they think that happiness is in that. Whatever we do is to achieve happiness. Whether we put up with some difficulty, we want some happiness. Whether we don't, we want some happiness. But he says that, yes, happiness for different people has different definitions, and therefore we see that different courses of, for example, for some, happiness means to be always happy, having pleasure in this life. For others, it may mean other things. May mean that, no, I want a good relation with Allah. That brings me happiness. So we always seek our happiness with a right definition of happiness. That's the important thing.
Thank you, Sheikh. Nizar?
Sheikh, I was just wondering whether in Islamic Republic of Iran institutions or in Najaf or anywhere else, centers of learning globally, within the Shia world, is there an attempt to interpret those ayahs a little bit differently in the modern context rather than verbatim?
Actually, if you refer to Tafsir al-Kashif by Shaykh Mughni rahmatullah alayh, you will see that he has a different spin on all these verses and opposes many of the fuqaha. One instance I will mention, inshallah, in the next verse, next week. But yes, of course, they are pondering on that. And especially now that the style of life is changed. Maybe some of the rulings should go back to their spirit rather than to their letter. But the point is, we cannot live in chaos. We cannot leave it to individuals to decide. It should be the legal authorities who do that. And in every society is that. For example, if a law is bad, people cannot violate it until the legal authorities would decide about it. The same thing in Islam as well.
Thank you, Sheikh. Anybody? Yes.
Alaikum salam.
I know that it is hard to go out to work and earn a living, but it's also very hard to bring up kids. In fact, I think bringing up kids is, although it's not numerated in terms of pounds and shillings, it's a very hard job. So why is it that...
That's why the paradise is under the feet of the mothers, isn't it?
But still in the world...
Would you change that?
No.
Would
No.
you exchange that? No.
No, I wouldn't.
Okay. It's true. It's right. But, I mean, when we want to deal it legally, we would say that, okay, this is a job in itself, so the women should not provide for the family. Or they are not obliged to do that. And even if they go to work, their income belongs to them, and it's the responsibility of the husband to provide for the family. This is Islamic law, isn't it? Even nowadays that both women and men work together, because women give birth. Whatever they earn belongs to themselves, and they don't have to spend it on family. It's the husband who has to provide. So because of these differences, of course, the responsibilities have changed.
Thank you. Yeah, Nizar. Bismillah.
So just continuing what Sister Razia said and my earlier question, that in the modern society, in the modern context, where you have to actually accept, a family unit has to accept that it is not possible to run a house with one earning, for example, there has to be reciprocity in the rules as well. Because when two people work, then there are obviously more issues, if I may use the term, more clashes likely. Everybody is tired in the evening. Whose responsibility is to look after the kids? Who does the homework? Who puts them to sleep? And then if we still stick to the ordained wordings or processes of divorce heavily on the men's side, then it all doesn't fit in modern society.
There's always this sort of conundrum that's, do we really want societies to be like this? You know, sometimes you make the laws to follow the pattern of life in society. Sometimes you want the law to create a pattern of life. Now, what we are dealing now is that, okay, the pattern of life is changed, so the law should follow. What we understand from the hududullah is that Allah, by these hudud, wants to create a pattern of life for us, in which women should not be obliged to go to work, in which women would have more time to look after their children. This is a different pattern of life, isn't it? So we always have to bear this in mind. It's very easy to say that, yes, of course, these laws, because the style of life is changed, these laws should not be enforced anymore, they should be changed. But on the other side, there's another argument that, wouldn't Allah want us to go to a different pattern of life? And that is the problem, that is the important problem.
But changing society, and now that we are a global village, you tell me with a hand on your heart, even in Iran, which I regard as a most, not absolute, Islamic society, or an attempt to create an Islamic society, do men only work? Does the household run on just one income?
No, not at all. I
Yeah.
say the pattern of life is changed. It's not here or Iran
So
or anywhere.
so changing is it's a global issue.
Yeah.
It's a modern issue. It can take centuries to change, if at all, if ever. Things have moved on.
These are the excruciating problems of
I know,
fiqh
but-
today, you know. So the fuqaha should really think about both sides of it, isn't it? The pattern which is forced upon us, and the pattern that the law wants to enforce in society, and find a middle way. Find a middle way, isn't it? The middle way, one example is this. For example, okay, Allah wants this pattern that the divorce should be in the hand of husbands. But the middle way is that today is not possible. Let's make a stipulation at the beginning of every marriage that the wife has the right to divorce herself. You see, there's the middle way. But it's just a temporary middle way. We have to work towards that ideal pattern that Allah has described for us.
Thank you, Safraz, and then we'll come to ladies and then brothers. Safraz, you want to?
Sheikh, just
You see, Sadiqa, we were finishing. You started the whole. Okay.
Sheikh, just a few points, if you can correct. The first thing is that in many cases, I'm not saying in all cases, and it wouldn't be fair to say that, but in many cases, we live a lifestyle that then forces two people to have to work. We don't need a bigger house and better cars and this and that and the other. It's a choice we make, and because of that, we've made other responsibilities come in. And the second thing is that even if a wife has to work because of the circumstances of the family, that doesn't remove the fact that it's the husband's right or responsibility to look after it, and not the wife's. If she does it, then she does it for her own sake and for out of her own will.
Absolutely.
But that does not transform transform the responsibility onto her,
Yeah, absolutely.
which is a problem sometimes being maybe not understanding. And the third thing, maybe this is correct, that, you know, science tells us that in order for society to maintain itself, you need a birth rate of about 2.4 children. And we're finding that in most Western societies where women have to work, I'm not saying they shouldn't, they should if they want to, but they have to, you find the birth rate is falling very rapidly, even places like Iran. And this is a self-correcting way that this society will not progress. In 50 years or 100 years, as you say, after 3 or 4 generations, we will have a problem.
Absolutely. That's why I said sometimes the consequences of certain changes show itself after several decades or after several centuries. You know, we realize that, oh, what a mistake we made before. One example I can give about Iran was this birth control. Okay, you know, birth control is somehow encouraged or sometimes enforced by the United Nations or the different organizations related to that on certain countries, and they give them bonuses, they give them some sort of allowance if they have a good birth control. And we always thought that it's a good thing to have this birth control because we don't have enough provisions to provide for new generations. And it followed for a couple of decades after the revolution. They were following that policy. And even this Dr. Marandi, who was in charge of that, received a sort of present from United Nations. And then suddenly we realized that, oh, this generation, the population is becoming old. And in 50, 40 years, we cannot actually sustain ourselves. Now the whole policy is changed. And Ayatollah Khamenei very clearly said that we made a mistake in this situation because we were not aware of its consequences. As I said, sometimes these consequences would show themselves later. And it's, well, we don't want to enter into political discussions why United Nations is encouraging or sometimes imposing these strict birth control programs on different third world countries, but the consequences are dire. And the Western society you can see as well. Yeah, that's happening.
Okay, any sisters? Brother, next to Nizar, yeah? Yes, ma'am.
Shaykh, thank you very much. Very. I think if we keep talking about the women's rights, we could probably spend another 2 days here. But whatever the point is, we have to agree.
Where are the men's rights?
We have to agree that the law changed with time. I mean, there are many things. Now it's illegal to really take 2 witnesses equal 1 witness. I mean, as the Quran says, the 2 women statement equivalent to 1. This is not it's not acceptable in any law, even in Iran. Therefore, if we agree that some of the law being specified in Quran might be really applied to that certain time, and we could really now take the best of it and we carry on. I know, I agree, you say we might not see the right thing and things will change. But the life become more complex. You cannot raise, for instance, like chopping people's hand now. Or we cannot have really women to have, in the Quran it says very obviously, الرجال قوامون على النساء. This is now, we have to interpolate this, how this is good apply. If it doesn't apply, they should be equal. Therefore, I think my point is, as with time, the laws evolutionary, not revolutionary, evolutionary change. And this is what I think we should agree on.
You know, as I said, there's always this issue of whether the law should follow the pattern which is enforced on society, or the society should should follow the pattern which law wants it to follow. But the point is, all these issues are being discussed by fuqaha. And if you see the amount of articles which are written on this in Hawza, in Qom Hawza, you will be surprised. All aspects are discussed. There are solutions to this, of course. It's very easy to say that, okay, all these are makruhat and mustahabat. As for example, in Surah Talaq, very clearly it says that when you have a divorce, you need 2 witnesses. Isn't it? Very clearly. Now, the Sunni fuqaha says it's mustahab. So they have actually done away with this. And the Shia say, no, it's a very clear injunction in the Quran, we have to have 2 witnesses in talaq. Now, you can say cutting the hands of the thieves is, again, one of the mustahabbat that Allah advises in certain settings, but not wajib. I mean, you can say all these things. The point is that, are we right in doing these things? Does it do good for us? Should we follow the pattern of society, which is laid down for us by people who did not believe in God at all? You know, these are the questions that should come to our minds. And I think the safest way and safest thing is to leave these discussions to fuqaha, let them issue fatwa, and they go to hell for that. Okay, we don't want to go to hell. Of course, they don't go to hell for that. they get thawab for it, but let them issue fatwa, and we follow it, and see, inshallah, how the developments would go.
Thanks. Any sisters before we go to brother?
So, going back to the definition of happiness and people seeking happiness, it's very relative to each and every individual. So if I take back thousands and thousands of years of Bibi Asya and Fir'aun, she was oppressed all along, but she had that glimpse of hope for the Akhirah, and she continued. But at the same time, Allah says in the Quran, to accept oppression is also haram, and to oppress others is also haram, because every soul is born with free will. Where does one draw the line? So they keep accepting the battering sometimes. Some women do suffer that, and they are cornered. So what do? Do they leave because oppression is not acceptable in Islam?
You know,
I don't know whether you get my question, because you're
yes. You know, there is one very interesting saying of Imam Ali alayhi salam, is that sometimes you have to choose between being an oppressor or oppressed. There's no third way. Sometimes it's like that. You either have to oppress or being oppressed. Now, Imam Ali says that وَلَإِنْ أَنْ أَكُونَ مَظْلُومًا أَحَبُّ إِلَيَّ أَنْ أَكُونَ ظَالِمًا. To be oppressed, in my eyes, is better than to oppress. As I said, these things are very isolated cases, individual cases that should be decided individually. That in every life, because every life is different. In every life, the person, first of all, should see where their happiness lies and how they can behave to reach that happiness. Sometimes it's mystical experience, sometimes it's worldly pleasure, wealth, sometimes it's just giving charity to others. All these bring happiness, isn't it? So if we follow this rule, it is very important, and Allama Tabatabai, because of his philosophical mind, points to this very sharply. If we follow that, I always want my happiness. I have to see where my happiness lies. For some people, happiness lies in sleeping very nicely, for example, waking in the morning, having good breakfast. That's happiness. For some people, that's not happiness. That's torture. They want to wake up before dawn. They want to do Salatul Layl. If they don't do it during the day, they are not happy at all. So, and Allah has left it to us. There's a great sort of border of liberty for human beings in Sharia, in law. Has left it to us. We can decide where our happiness lies. No one, I think, can decide in our place what we should do. It's always our own judgment.
Thank you. Muhammad?
Going back to the original question, where it talks about the rights of where you talk the rights of man over women and rights of women over men, and contrast that with the status of woman, which is given by the Hadith and the Quran, and Jannat lies at the feet of the mother. So where does Jannat not lie at the feet of man?
Where is what, sorry?
Paradise lies at the feet of the mother. So what about the men? Does paradise not lie at the feet of men? So tongue-in-cheek question: has Allah not created in parity men and women?
In parity, of course, is there, yes. But inshallah, women will take us to paradise with them. Don't worry.
Thank you, indeed, Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.